guys, it's Mark Zicree, Mr. Sci-Fi, also known as Mark Zicree of Space Command and other stuff. And I haven't been posting as often as other times because it's been very busy. We're working on getting the first 2 hours of the pilot done and turned into Blu-rays and shipped to all the people who've ordered them. And we're also working on the third hour of Space Command. We've started shooting the fourth hour of Space Command, not including Ripple Effect, the 2-hour pandemic episode that we did. And additionally, we're working on the graphic novel of the prequel, which we've also done as a radio play. And so I just wanted to kind of check in a little bit, tell you where we are, where we're going, all that stuff, because there's a lot. Now, first of all, those of you who are regular fans of Mr. Sci-Fi and know that I spill my tea on myself, for years I've worn a necklace that was a nickel iron meteorite, and that kind of went away, and somewhere it's somewhere. But something I've wanted to have for a very long time is this, and I don't know if we'll be able to show it in enough detail, but what's inside there are small little pieces of a meteorite from Mars. Some of you who know about meteors know that every now and then something will hit Mars, and the ejecta will hit escape velocity, and some of it will come to Earth, and there's ways they can test meteorites to determine if they're from Mars. And so I'm wearing Mars. I'm wearing a piece of Mars right here, and that's extremely cool, extremely cool. So beyond that, here's some of the things I've been up to lately, in addition to working on all the things I'm working on. We'll start with just kind of what I've been reading. I'm always reading several books simultaneously, and usually I'll be reading maybe a science fiction novel, a mainstream novel, a book on history, or on science, but always several at a time. And so right now I'm reading The World of Adena, which is written and illustrated beautifully by Mobius, who was a designer on Alien. And I've long admired his work, particularly his work on Alien, but had never had a chance to really study his work in depth. So I'm reading through this, really enjoying it. Also, when I did the recent John Wyndham Mr. Sci-Fi piece, a variety of people said, well, what about some of the other famous science fiction writers of England, such as Arthur C. Clarke? Well, I've talked about Arthur C. Clarke a fair amount, but then they were talking about Nigel Neal, who did Quatermass, and Brian Aldiss. Now, I haven't really gotten into Brian Aldiss very, very deeply in all these years. I had read his story that was made into AI, Artificial Intelligence, and he was not happy with that film at all. But he's been very prolific since the 50s, and he died only about 3 years ago. And so now I'm starting to read his work, and I bought a bunch of his novels off eBay the other day. Let's see, I think some of them are, they're over here, in around here, but also, here's a couple. This is fun. The Interpreter. It's got a great British cover. That's the British paperback. He wrote in England, of course. And then Greybeard, that's another one of his novels. And also, as you know, I'm very interested in science fiction book covers and the different ways science fiction is marketed over time and over different editions. So Brian Aldiss's first science fiction novel, while he was working as like a news agent at a newsstand or whatever, a book and newsstand in England, was a book. This is the paperback first edition, nonstop. It's got a very cool and exciting cover. But when it came to America, they not only changed the title, but marketed it very, very differently. And this is the first edition paperback of the American version, which is called Starship here in America. And it's about some people on a generation ship, a ship that will last many generations before it gets to its destination, and they've forgotten through various mishaps that they're on a spaceship. This was popularized by Robert Heinlein with Universe, which he then expanded into Orphans of the Sky. He wrote Universe in 1939. There was another writer who came up with that same idea in 1936. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but many writers have worked on that notion, including Alexei Panshin and Harry Harrison with Captive Universe, and of course Harlan Ellison with The Star Lost, which was a TV show he tried to make that he was very unhappy with ultimately, but but his script, I believe his pilot script won the Writers Guild Award, and has subsequently been turned into a graphic novel and so forth. So it's available out there. But I'm reading Starship now, or actually I should call it Nonstop, because that is its more preferred title by the author, and really enjoying it. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful job. And beyond that, I mentioned recently that I watched the movie Capricorn 1. I started watching some of the films of Peter Hyams, 2010, which I like very much, and Outland. I just bought a spacesuit from Outland. By the way, we're going to be doing this an entire Mr. Sci-Fi soon on that wall over there. Sometimes when I do the live Mr. Sci-Fis, you can see a little bit of the framed things on that wall, but there's photos of various friends of mine and autographs and letters and just all sorts of cool stuff. So it'll probably take a little while to go through everything on that wall, but it'll be a really fun time. So I watched the film and I enjoyed it, Capricorn 1, that is. And then I found out amazingly that there wasn't just one novelization of that movie. There were two of the same movie by one British author and one American author, and they were marketed in those countries in two totally different editions. So I ordered both of them. But the interesting thing, this is the hardcover first edition of the British version, and it's credited to Bernard L. Ross, but it was actually written by Ken Follett, who became a very, very famous novelist in his own right. And I've actually sent him an email to see if he might sign this copy, which I think would be hilarious. So I'm working on that. And, and mainly my days are taken up with Space Command, and we're also working on the Showrunners Network, Sweet Haven, which I'm creating with Rockne O'Bannon, and Fugitive Space, which I'm doing with Mark Fergus and Hawk Ostby, and the Rod Serling Project, and just tons of stuff. Really, really fun. And Magic Time. We're going to be shooting Magic Time as well. And, but here's just a few little other odds and ends, interesting odds and ends. I'm going to be doing a video about my friend Jim Rumpf. He made ceramics. This is the Obi-Wan Kenobi mug he made that's just gorgeous. And I have many of his pieces, and sadly he's no longer with us, but I thought it'd be very fun to reminisce about him and show some of his work. And so we'll be doing that in the near future. Now another book that I've been starting to read is a book that Verner Von Braun wrote, and that was about his plans for an expedition to Mars. He, of course, was very, very central to the Apollo program, and prior to that, of course, he was in the SS and was, the leader, the prime driver of the V1 and V2 rocket programs in Germany, and then Operation Paperclip, covert operation by the American government, brought him here, along with several other German scientists, to mount the missile program and the space program. And so at the time, back in the 60s, Tom Lehrer was he's a Harvard math professor, and he wrote these wonderful satirical songs. If you've never heard his work, Tom Lehrer, he's terrific. And and one of his songs was about Werner von Braun. And it was very funny because Werner von Braun published his autobiography, and it was called I Aim at the Stars. And Tom Lehrer referenced this in his song, because the gag was I am at the stars, but sometimes I hit London. So today I was at Barnes & Noble, and I saw this bookmark for sale, and it says, "Shoot for the moon. Even if you miss it, you will land among the stars." So I took it home, and what I did was I said, "Shoot for the moon, and you will land," and I crossed out among the stars, and I put on London. So I think I'll use this as the bookmark in my Werner von Braun novel. I'm also going to be reading V2 by Robert Harris. Robert Harris wrote Fatherland, which is a great alternative history where the Nazis won World War II, one of my favorite subgenres of science fiction. And he's written a new novel about the V2 missile program. So, and there's many interesting trivia questions that you can ask people. And one of them is, which was the first government to send a rocket into space to achieve, that distance and that success? And the answer is the Nazis with the V2s. They actually went into space and came back down in a parabola. So it wasn't the Americans, wasn't the Russians. And, very fun, very interesting question. So beyond that, In the pilot of Space Command, if you've watched it, you'll notice that there's a cameo of me in a spacesuit, and I say "wow" when Jack Hammer crash lands a ship spectacularly. And I was originally going to have that be my only cameo, but then we were shooting the battle on Titan with these freedom fighters in kind of cobbled together spacesuits with synthetics shooting them. And one of the actors didn't show up that day. And I said, well, I can put on a spacesuit. So I actually get blown up in that scene. And then we have a final appearance of my character at the end of the second hour, which you'll see when we release that very shortly. But I thought it'd be very, very fun to do a story linking those three appearances as one person and one narrative. And so I came up, and back when they asked me what I wanted my character's name to be, I said Grizzled Space Jockey. And so, because it's like an older guy who's been, in space for a long time. So I started writing that short story to tell the story of that character. And an editor of an anthology called Space 1979 asked me if I would like to contribute a story, and this seemed perfect. And I also just wrote an introduction to that collection talking about 1970s science fiction. And so in the near future, I'll read this entire story, Grizzled Space Jockey, on Mr. Sci-Fi with appropriate illustrations and, from Space Command. But it was very fun writing it, and I hope you'll enjoy hearing it. I may also read the introduction I just wrote for that collection as well, because why not? My channel. So let's see, what other things to talk about? Basically, we're having a great time. We managed to keep our studio open. We managed to keep our people employed. Thank you to all of the supporters and all of our investors. If you want to buy a share in Space Command, they're still available at $7,500 each. If you want to support us with Patreon, all that information is down there. For some reason, the Space Command shop that used to be down there through Teespring has vanished, so I have to talk to those guys and figure out, how to troubleshoot that. But in my copious free time, meantime, Elaine and I are getting ready to do the table read on Sweet Haven with Barbara Bain and Bob Picardo and Mike Harney and so forth. We're also working hard on shooting Space Command ongoingly. We're also, Elaine has a feature called Voiceless Roar that we're going to be shooting. Just sent the script to Barbara Bain to see if she might be interested in playing the mother, with Juliet Landau playing her daughter, because that's her real life daughter. So that could be extremely fun. And beyond that, we're just doing all the stuff we're doing, and the day is filled with adventure and fun and excitement. And I'm writing the new book, Greenlighting Yourself, and that's coming along fine. I'm about halfway through, more or less, and so that'll be coming out in 2021. And it just keeps going. I mean, my dream of heaven is to be doing, my TV shows, my books, all of these things, and here I am doing it. So that's about it for now. If you have a question or something you'd like me to talk about on Mr. Sci-Fi, please send it my way. By the way, we just watched Citizen Kane again, which is a great movie, and there's a movie about the writer of that movie called Mank that David Fincher just did, and is on Netflix, and I recommend it. And beyond that, there's a Russian science fiction film called Sputnik that's now available on video on demand, and I really enjoyed that as well. There's odds and ends. I mean, a lot of science fiction lately is kind of a little bit, not satisfying, but there are those other projects that do manage to rise above. So that's about it for now. Thanks for everything, and we'll talk real soon. And make sure you subscribe to Mr. Sci-Fi if you haven't, because anything science fiction that you're interested in, I'm sure we've talked about or will talk about at one point or another. Thanks a lot, guys. Talk soon.